So, friends, let us begin the discourse with chanting of these three ways of saluting or remembering Buddha in their tradition. Please repeat after me. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Translated, it means, I take refuge in the Wise One. I take refuge in His wisdom transmitted, His teachings transmitted, and I take refuge in the tradition that emanates from Him. Today, we shall remember the teachings of Buddha, especially some practical aspects of it. It is, of course, a vast literature of Buddhistic tradition, and certainly it is not easy to read all that even in the lifetime. But it is all centered in what is called Four Noble Truths. They are called noble because only when one's awareness rises to a certain level, when it is cultivated to certain level, they become really apparent to us. Otherwise, not that we don't see it, but the significance of that does not appeal to us. It is, therefore they are called noble or Aryan truths. The Sanskrit or the Pali word was Aryan truths. Arya means, Arya is not a particular race as described by some Indologists. That is not, the Western Indologists they tend to classify things racially. But this is not really a word meant to convey a particular race. Arya means the one who has become noble, who has been leading not a life of just the tribal, uneducated animal instincts, but a cultivated life. So this is the called Aryan. So when we reach that stage, then certain truths become apparent to us, not before that. So, for example, one truth, the first noble truth that he proclaimed, that the dukkha ariya satyam, the noble truth of suffering, or dukkha, suffering. What it means is that the suffering is everywhere. All pervasive in our life is suffering. It is, although we get glimpses of pleasure, yet we can see that in and through there is this painful suffering. Even what we call as pleasure, it vanishes. And in that too, there is the seed of dissatisfaction and suffering. So therefore, Buddha could see that. We are aware of it in a way, but not pinchingly aware as the essential part of this universe. We try to make this universe free from suffering. We feel that let us change a few things in the world, let us change the president, let us change the some social structure, and then all the sufferings will go away. That is not going to happen in principle. And it is like, by washing this salt, it is not going to become sweet. It is by nature. That taste it has, it is salty. So it is not going to be devoid of that saltiness. So that is the nature of salt. So nature of this world, an essential component of this world is suffering. And the second noble truth is that this suffering is not without a cause, which is certainly a very hopeful thing. It is because when it is a kind of diagnosis, as you can say, that when you can diagnose the disease, then a curative measure can be applied. That okay, this was what caused this problem. Now, if I eliminate this cause, the effect of it, this disease, that also will go away. So, there is a cause for this suffering. And what is this cause? He identifies it as Trishna, or in Pali, Tanha means the craving. And he also saw how this craving comes in our life. It is based on ignorance about our own being, who am I, and what the world is. This is the cause of craving. Then the third noble truth. Of course, there is, if we go in deep, there is a very good discussion, very elevating discussion on each of these noble truths. And we can have a Sunday lecture on each of them, and still we would have not been gone deep enough. But we are today planning to speak more about the fourth noble truth. So I am giving just an outline of the first three so that we can connect to the fourth one. So the third is that there is the possibility of this removal of this cause of suffering. It is important because there is a cause that you trace, but if there is no removal of that cause, if there is no state in which that cause can be removed, then even knowing that the cause, we are helpless, cannot do anything about it. And therefore the third noble truth, yes, there is this cessation of suffering. When this cause, this desire is removed, and it is possible to remove it. And then what happens? The suffering goes away. The life becomes free from suffering by removing the cause of the suffering, and it is basically possible. That is the third noble truth. And the fourth is, there is a practical way of doing it. By transforming our life, we can actually do it. And this is what is called the Eightfold Noble Path. This became very famous as the Eightfold Noble Path, with various disciplines that we can apply to our life so that it will go on this path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So, this is a path. Sometimes it is called, in a misleading way really, the middle path of Buddha, which may give an idea that it is a path of compromise. That is not at all what it means. Middle path means that it is neither indulging in the comforts and pleasures of the world, nor going for body torturing penances. And neither of them are going to lead us to the truth. What is needed is assiduously following the disciplined path. It is just as we cannot go or reach the destination if we have, say, a very good, very costly Lamborghini car, but if we are driving it in the wrong direction, then just by having the most beautiful and pricey car also is not going to take us to the destination, nor if we just therefore brake the car and then the car is not moving at all, then also we are not going to reach the destination. What is needed is having a capable, efficient vehicle driven in the right direction. And this is what is meant by the following the eightfold noble paths, the eight-limbed noble paths. It is called Ashtanga. 8 limbs are there. And so we will discuss these limbs. The first is called the right view. These 8 are divided into 3 categories. The first is the wisdom or prajna part, the wisdom part of this. What is it? It is the right view. We have to samma ditthi. In Pali it was called samma ditthi, samyak drishti. Means we have to see, learn to see the things in a proper way, as it is the understanding of the noble truths. This is what is called the right wisdom or right view, right understanding. It needs to be developed. In the world, we try to know many, many different things. But most important thing is to know these 4 noble truths. This is that the world is as such full of suffering, and our desire is the cause of that suffering. That understanding needs to be developed. This idea you will see in all different religions presented in various different ways. We see that we automatically follow the course that is prompted by our desires. Why do I do this thing? Because, well, I like it, this is my desire to do it. The desire is not normally seen as the source of suffering. In fact, it is seen as the source of pleasure. It is only when the results come, then we see it as the source of suffering. But otherwise we see it as the source of pleasure and go for it. So the right understanding is these desires are they like the traps set. Like you set the trap for a mouse and a bait is put into it to attract the mouse, and the mouse sees or becomes aware of this food for it, gets attracted to it, does not see the trap associated with it. So also we see the object of desire as very attractive, and we get pulled towards it, forgetting that it is associated with a trap. And when we know the trap, then it is too late, So, therefore, one has to learn to see that it in a total way, that it is not just this nice food, but also surrounding it, near it, there is this trap. So that is the proper understanding of the things of the world. In every way, we have to analyze and see if the thing is going to lead to the right path or not. It is sometimes also described, therefore, to look upon them that whether it is going to bring good karma or bad karma to me, merit or demerit. When we do something, therefore, in the description of this, Lord Buddha describes that avoid anything that will inflict sufferings or misery to others. So practice non-injury, practice non-stealing, and such virtues whereby you will have this right understanding in your life manifest. So, right understanding. Then the second of this noble path is right resolve, samma sankalpa, the right resolve. Because even though we have the right understanding, that remains hidden and static. It does not really become functional in our life without a resolve to put it in practice. Many of us understand that, well, this is not right, this is right, but then there is not enough resolve to take the life in the right direction. There is not much strength in that thought that this is right. Well, if something is right, then why do we not move in that direction? There has to be a strength in that resolve. So having a strong resolve, that alone helps us to go in the right direction. Because of the lack of resolve, we see that many of our wonderful ideas, they do not become practical. And our resolves on the New Year day, many of us make good resolves. There is a story, a humorous story I had heard about diaries. When the New Year comes, those diaries, they are in the markets for sale. These your books in which you write the daily this thing, what you did, what you didn't do, all the important things you write in that. So in one shop they were selling the diaries. The shopkeeper, that owner of the shop, had made quite a few, thinking that there will be a good sale. So in the month of December, he had put those diaries for selling, thinking that a lot of them will get sold. And he had put the price very reasonable. He thought that this is, nobody can beat his price. So his diary was selling for something like $10, very nicely leather bound, very beautiful pages and all that, good printing. So for $10 he thought that it is a very good price. But then he discovered that another shop right across the street was selling exactly same diaries, same looking diaries for $7. And he could not understand it. For $7 it will not even be the manufacturing cost that would get covered. So naturally everybody bought diaries from there. And the stock with this person remained as it is. He suffered a good loss in that business of selling diaries. So after anyway the season was over, he asked this man, this shopkeeper, that, well, how did you manage to sell this price, these diaries at $7 a piece? It does not even cover the manufacturing cost? Did you sell it at loss? He said, no, I made my money. But how? Tell me. And he said, well, that's a business secret. But now the season is over, you can now reveal. He said, look, I have studied some psychology. People make resolves that they will write diary this year. So, how many pages your diary has? He said, well, 365 days, I have got 365 pages. He said, that is where you made the mistake, in my diary, for the month of January, I have put 31 pages. For the month of February, again I have put 28 pages. For the month of March, instead of 31, I put only 20 pages. Then I kept on reducing further. Because almost all people have a resolve that I am going to write diary this year. But that strength diminishes after a while. And then they forget, okay, today, you see, I am not feeling well, I was busy today, forget it, and so forth. So, it doesn't get written. So, thus the resolve. And then after September comes, even if you think of it, oh, this year is anyway gone, let me restart properly with the new year. So, and the same thing happens in the new year too, unless we make our resolve really strong. So, the strong resolve is the second important component of this Eightfold Noble Path, that we have this sankalpa or resolve. Without that we cannot go further. The third thing is right speech. Samma vacha, our speech needs to be controlled. Speech is an important part, means how we convey our thoughts. Whatever speech doesn't mean something that is spoken by mouth. It can be conveyed by gestures, you can write it, and so forth. So, letting people know of our thoughts and communication, and that is what is meant by this samyak vacha, that it has to be given out in a way that it will be not hurting to anyone, it will be beneficial to people, and so many aspects of it. When we speak, we have to remember that the words, they are very valuable, very important. They can make or break things. They are like weapons, can hurt. They are like fire which can cook or burn. So the words are very important. So using the right words is an important part of this noble path. We have to cultivate it. More details are given in this description. I am not going into it. One can refer to Bhagavad Gita, where it is described what is the sattvika, the speech which is done according to the sattva, according to the rajas, according to the tamas. So, the speech that is full of sattva is what is to be cultivated as part of this Eightfold Noble Path. And then there is the next three are included in another category which is called the Shila Skandha. What it could mean, that developing ethical conduct. An ethical and moral training has to be given, so that that training will automatically make us, our life, full of these moral virtues. It is basically there, and Lord Buddha in these descriptions always has been telling that all these factors of the Eightfold Noble Path, they can be practiced on two layers. One layer is the mundane layer, which is good, but for a person who is actually wanting to lead a spiritual life, a life that is going on this path, has to understand a deeper and broader meaning of these two. So, not just superficially, that it is okay, I shall be nice to people, superficially I will say nice words to you, but internally I will keep on cursing them. And that is not what is meant here. Even for one's own practice of this noble path, we have to internally too, we have to practice these noble truths, these ideas. So, then the right action is that whatever we say, let us put it into practice. As they say, walk the talk. It is, we have to make our actions corresponding to our words. Our thoughts, words and actions, they must be in harmony with each other. And therefore, the action, right action, it is one aspect of it is speak the truth. Speak the truth is means what is right, what is true, what is factually correct, what you know as right, present it as it is to the others. So that is speaking the truth. Then there is the speaking something that will be beneficial. Something may be true, but has been uttered to hurt somebody. That's not right speech or right action. So utter it in this way that people will be helped by it. Do the actions congenial to that. Also, the fifth aspect of it is the right livelihood. One has to earn the livelihood. We have to, all of us certainly have to pay our bills. So, we have to earn livelihood. But let us make sure that we are not earning it through wrong, immoral means, not by stealing or cheating others, robbing others. That's not the right way of earning livelihood. So, earning livelihood in the right way, an important aspect of going on this noble path. And right effort, it is this Samyak Vyayam, it is called Samyak Vyayam, means the effort that we make is to be directed in it is, as it is said in engineering, it is a vector, means the right quantity and right direction. Both are to be there. That the effort must be strong, it must have enough force, and it should be well directed. So, such effort like discipline of doing your daily meditations or performing certain acts that purify us. So, those things are to be done with intensity and proper attitude about it. So, this is the right effort. Put these as a matter of exercise. Like exercises have to be performed regularly and in the right quantity. Whatever according to the needs of one's body, those exercises are to be performed. If we don't perform, then they are not going to be of any use, or perform irregularly, that is also not going to be of much use. So it is to be done regularly and with proper intensity and with proper direction to it. It is not that haphazardly we are doing something, that doesn't account for or called the right effort. Right effort has these important sides to it, that it should be the going in the right direction. So, then there are the internal practices of this Eightfold Noble Path, that meditation and concentration, that is called the first of that is the seventh of this eight aspects of this noble path. It is right mindfulness, that samyak smriti, sammasiti, as it is called in Pali. It is translated variously by different English writers. One way of thinking of it as right mindfulness. So, we have to be mindful of what is important, what is not important. And this is the as we see that there are so many things that we are attracted to or are caught in our attention, but we have to choose which is going to be beneficial to us and do those. There can be many things. One writer on science has mentioned this, that we have to choose. There will be infinitely many, practically speaking, infinitely many topics that we can do research on, can spend time studying them. And he gives a somewhat funny example, that one may spend a whole life studying as to how many bed bugs are there in the world and how many of them are male and how many female. Yeah, it could be a big study, but is it going to be of any practical importance? So, we have to choose in life what is going to lead me to the cessation of suffering, and do that. Our attraction can go in infinitely many directions. And so we have to choose that what is going to be really beneficial for my reaching the goal. So pick up that. So that is mindfulness. And then right concentration, that focus completely on that. It is actually translation of Samyak Samadhi. The concentration really builds the powers of the mind. Our mind has infinite power, but because of lack of concentration, it all gets frittered. It is like the sunlight. As such, you stand in sun, you feel warm, but not that you catch fire. But if there is a big lens that can concentrate those rays, and you point, we used to do it in our schools, take a paper and with the lens concentrate those rays, and then the paper will catch fire. Because when you concentrate, it generates power. So our mind too, when it gets concentrated, it generates power. And with that power, great things can be accomplished. We may get that feeling that, well, this noble path and all that looks very tough. I may not be able to really do it in my life. But it is only because we are not concentrating our mind. The power is there, but because of non-concentration, it is not available. When we concentrate it, it becomes available to us. So, with that, we can follow this path, and thus, as is the custom of Buddha, Lord Buddha throughout, he was not telling us the religious truths from some book or quoting some this heavenly authority. He did not preach a religion that was based on just faith. It is a religion that is rationally presented, and each of us can experience it in life. So it is like teaching the science. That is why in the modern world you find people are so much attracted to the teachings of Buddha, because it does not tell you that believe in a book. Something has to be accepted as true because written in a book, or because some person is telling you to do that. No, it is something that can be given on a rational basis, on the basis of just cause and effect. You see this chain of cause and effect, and thus when you eliminate the cause, you can eliminate the effect. That is how he has presented this whole idea. Of course, he acknowledges that this ultimate truth is beyond human conception, but that the path is available for human conception. So as long as your rational faculty can lead you, go by it. Don't have to give it up just because the final destination is beyond rationality. Yes, it is beyond rationality. Like you take an airplane and say go to some place. Now airplane brought you to the airport, but then you have to get out of the airplane, go out from the airport, and then go to the place by using some other means. You go actually to the place that you are going to go. But till the airport, till the aircraft lands, be there, use it. Don't try to jump out of it even before it lands. So, similarly, reason is a wonderful faculty given to us. We have to make good use of it. And that makes us, see that the religion is not dependence on some age-old authority, that it is written 5,000 years ago in some book and I have to follow it. It is not a religion of fear that you have to follow it, otherwise you will be excommunicated or subjected to inquisition. No, you go by reason. See the things, how they change your life, and our own rational effort will take us to that. What happens many times is that we have rational faculty, we use it, but it gets mixed with our emotions, our likes and dislikes, and thus it does not lead us to the truth. That because, for example, something I like, even though my rational faculty may tell me that that's not correct, that's not good for you, still I will not go by my reason, I will go by my liking. So therefore, to see the things in a rational way, that is an important aspect of cultivating our life according to this eightfold noble path. As we move in this direction, we will be able to see ourselves that how life transforms. At every stage, we will see that the change will be perceptible to ourselves. We do not need the certificate of some religious authority, but our own experience will be able to tell us that yes, we are feeling more free from this bondage of suffering or the suffering of bondage. Either way, it means the same thing. So it is a bondage, and the bondage means suffering, or suffering itself is a bondage because we cannot get out of it. So when we move on the path tells us the progress also. Like if I am going towards Boston from here, I will see that Boston 50 miles. Then if I am moving in the right direction, then I will see what? Boston 60 miles? It will be Boston 40 miles or something like that. That will tell me that I am moving in the right direction. So similarly, in this, our progress too, we can judge ourselves that we are going on the right track, right path, and moving on properly by these signs that life will have more contentment, more proper resolve, more joy coming in, more feeling of freedom from these afflictions, more love will be seen in our life. All these indications we ourselves can see. So, thank you, friends. Any questions? Yes, Raymond? Yes. Actually, on our Jnana Yoga class on Friday, this question was raised about self-will and how to increase it, and if it is somebody else's will, self-will is sometimes seen as misnomer by many as, since I am bound, in all ways my will also is bound. Is that your question? Yeah. So it is true that self-will is very important. In fact, Schopenhauer, while studying Vedanta, he mentions that this self-will is of great importance. And so, although he gives it rather too much importance, saying that I am because I will. It is not true. I am even though I may not will. I give rise to will, not that the will gives rise to me. But still, the idea that the will plays a very prominent role, and in fact, that the yoga of action, karma yoga, gives a way to build the strength of this will. It is, the will has to be strengthened. That time I quoted from a play from George Bernard Shaw. It's a very nice sentence I like, that one of the characters say there, that most of us are willing spirits but lack spirited wills. So it is, we have to cultivate the spirited wills so that we can overcome the obstacles. And it is a matter of cultivation. So even when we pay attention to that, we will see that when we engage ourselves in those actions, the activity is a great source of building the will. So it goes on building the will the more we engage ourselves in right action. So that is how it gets built up.